好，各位嘉宾好，今天我们邀请研究生哈志豪来给我们介绍菲律宾如何打击 Philippines against human trafficking.志豪, would you briefly introduce yourself?
大家好，我是哈志豪，我是菲律宾人。
哦，你现在中文讲这么好了。
That's the only basic Chinese I knew. I am from Philippines and I work in the Bureau of Immigration as an immigration officer. So this topic, human trafficking, is close to our job as an officer who interacts with passengers and try to fight human trafficking. So today I will be discussing the Philippines against human trafficking. I will be discussing first the laws and regulations being implemented by the Philippines against trafficking in the Philippines. Number one is the Republic Act 9208 or RA number 9208, otherwise known as the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2003, which was amended, expanded by Republic Act number 10364 or RA 10364, otherwise known as Expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2012. Further, it was expanded again in 2022 with the enactment of RA number 11862, as otherwise known as Expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2022. There is also a new law which caters to child abuse and child exploitation, which is RA 11930, otherwise known as Anti-Online Sexual Abuse or Exploitation of Children, or OSIC, and Anti-Child Sexual Abuse or Exploitation Materials, or CSAEM Act of 2022. So let us discuss each law. So RA 9208 is the foundation law against human trafficking in the Philippines, which defines trafficking in persons and lists prohibited acts. With this law, the Interagency Council Against Trafficking or IACAT was created, which has a mandate to coordinate and monitor implementation of the law.
那不错的 English and translate into the Chinese. Very good.
The second law is the RA 10364, the Expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2012. So after the implementation of 9208, there was an amendment expanding the scope and accountability of public officials. It also recognizes online and electronic means as a method of trafficking, include also stronger provisions for the confidentiality of trafficked victims. Also in this law, the local government unit was enhanced in protecting and rehabilitating victims of human trafficking. And in 2022, there's another amended law, which is RA 11862, which expanded again the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act. And with this enactment, it has strengthened the RA 10364 to meet international standards and tackle contemporary trafficking methods. So from 2012 to 2022, there have been lots of trends in human trafficking, especially when the COVID-19 struck. The Philippines adopted to a more comprehensive and expanded anti-human trafficking law. So it broadened the scope of liability of traffic-related materials, which includes social media and digital platforms, which we know that during lockdowns in the COVID-19 pandemic, digital platforms were used to traffic or exploit individuals who are less fortunate or susceptible for human trafficking. This law also provided non-criminalization of trafficking victims, particularly when they engage in illegal activities as a result of coercion. So before, there was no protection for the trafficking victims. In this law, the non-criminalization of traffic victims if they become a victim due to coercion. So it also give a protection for traffic victims to be rehabilitated at the same time to reintegrate to the society. It also improved cross-border collaboration and offered better protection for overseas Filipino workers. So as we know, overseas Filipino workers who are working abroad are susceptible for work exploitation and human trafficking acts. This law gives protection to them, and it gives more responsibility for the government to cooperate with other international organizations and non-government organizations. This is a new law, which is the Republic Act 11930, or the Anti-Online Sexual Abuse or Exploitation of Children. So this law is distinct from other anti-trafficking legislation because this law focuses on online sex exploitation of children. So in this context, the law specifically targets online abuse, exploitation of children, and materials associated with child abuse and exploitation, highlighting its narrow focus with the broader framework of anti-trafficking law. So in the RA 9208, the trafficking in person was defined. It refers to the recruitment, transportation, transfer or harboring or receipt of person with or without the victim's consent or knowledge within or across national borders by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power or of position, taking advantage of the vulnerability of the persons, or the giving or receiving of payments or benefit to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation, which includes at a minimum the exploitation or prostitution of others or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor or services, slavery, servitude, or the removal or sale of organs. So the recruitment, transportation, transfer, and harboring of receipts of a child for the purpose of exploitation shall also be considered as trafficking in persons, even if it does not involve any of the means set forth in the preceding paragraph. So what are the elements of trafficking? So there are three elements. First is the act, second is the means, and the purpose. So when we say acts, this refers to recruit, obtain, hire, provide, offer, transport, transfer, maintain, harbor, and receive. When we say means, it refers to threats, force, abduction, intimidation, coercion, fraud, deception, abuse of power of position, taking advantage of vulnerability, giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve consent. While the purpose could be sex trafficking, labor trafficking, or organ trafficking. So when we say sex trafficking, it could involve prostitution, sexual exploitation, pornography, or sex tourism. While labor trafficking is forced labor, slavery, involuntary servitude, death, bondage. While organ trafficking is the sale of organ or removal of organs. So the important provisions of RA 9208, which is strengthened by RA 10364, is the attempted trafficking as well accomplice and accessories to TIP as criminal offense. So before, there were the accomplices and accessories to the trafficking in persons is not included in 9208, but here, even there's an attempted trafficking, accomplices and accessories could be held liable for criminal offense. So it also gives stiffer penalties on the use of trafficked persons, such as 6 to 12 years imprisonment, fine of not less than 50,000 and not more than 1 million pesos, dismissal from service of a public official with perpetual disqualification to hold public office, and deportation and blacklisting of foreigners. Also, in this law, it ensures that human trafficking in person cases should not be dismissed based on the affidavit of desistance filed by the victims or their respective parents or legal guardians. So there are history wherein the victims on behalf of the victims, parents or legal guardians fill out an affidavit of desistance in filing of cases. But now in RA 18364, it ignores affidavit of desistance. So the case could proceed without any desistance from the trafficking persons from victims, from their consent, as long as there can be proven acts of trafficking in persons. The case would proceed. Also, in this law, it specified and defined more roles for the Interagency Council Against Trafficking, or IACAT, to further assist and support victims of trafficking. So these are the members of the IACAT. We have the Department of Justice, Department of Social Welfare and Development, DFA, Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Labor and Employment, Philippine National Police, Bureau of Immigration, Philippine Commission on Women, DILG, PCTC, CFO, DepEd, DOH, DICT, DMW, DOT, DOTR, PCG, NCIP, NBI, CWC, NACC, AMLAC, LCP, LPP, LMP. And the non-government includes women, children, Blas Ople, overseas Filipinos. So these are IACAT members who were mandated by the RA 9208 and enhanced by 113064.
Many departments participate.
Yeah, so before there are only a few members of the IACAT in the Republic Act 9208, but with the implementation of 113064, more agencies, more government agencies, and more non-government organizations were included in the IACAT task force.
IACAT.
Yeah, IACAT. So it's like a body composed of different government agencies. It could be law enforcement, social welfare, education, every government agencies that could help and stop human trafficking are included in the IACAT.
IACAT. Thank you. Thank you.
So,
continue.
So this is the generalized functions and power of the IACAT. First is developing and implementing effective regulations and oversight, coordinate efforts across agencies and conducting awareness campaigns, ensuring rapid responses to reported trafficking issues, support legal actions against violators, and facilitating reintegration of victims. It also collaborates with local international entities for better data sharing and protective measures. It trains personnel to identify and assist trafficked individuals. It also exercises necessary powers to fulfill the Act's objective, the Republic Act objectives. So, Philippines maintained Tier 1 for 9 consecutive years. So, based on the U.S. State Department's 2024 Trafficking in Persons report, indicates that Philippines meets the minimum standard for combating trafficking and remains on Tier 1. So, there are 3 tiers: Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 1 is the highest category that could give to a country, and Philippines maintained that Tier 1. So, what does Tier 1 mean? So, this means that the country made significant efforts during the reporting period, including increasing investigation and prosecutions of traffickers, finalizing new procedures to address trafficking-related corruption, updating its trafficking law, and imposing substantial prison sentences on most traffickers. Also, in this report, this is the data of the Philippines for 2024. So, in the current period, there are 417 that are being investigated. 277 were investigated, and there's an increase of 50.5%. So, in 2024, the investigation of trafficking cases increased by 50.5%. While prosecution of traffickers current period, there are 264 alleged prosecuted traffickers, while the previous has 139, with an increase of 90% in prosecutions overall. So there's also an increase in prosecution of traffic suspects. While the conviction in the current period, there's 80 individual convicted of trafficking in persons, while the previous period has 86. So there's a change, which decrease of 7% in total conviction. While the current prosecution, there are 2,772 prosecution from prior years and being continued, while the sentencing of traffickers is for the current period, there are 60 sentenced to prison terms with a minimum of 4 years to life imprisonment, with a fine of 50,000 to 8 million pesos or $900 to $144,270. So this is also the summary of rescued victims for the 2024. So in March 2024, the location is the Bamban Tarlac with 800 plus rescued from Pogo Link Scam Hub. So Pogo means Philippine Offshore Gaming Office. Philippine Offshore Gaming Operation. So it's like Chinese individuals going to Philippines, create a company and exploit individuals, whether Chinese national, Vietnamese, Filipino, being employed in that scam hub to perform illegal acts such as scamming, stealing of credit cards, and other illegal acts. So those employees in the Pogo hub were rescued in Bamban Tarlac during March 2024. In August 2024 in Cebu, there are 162, so foreign nationals from illegal Pogo operation. August 31 in Lapu-Lapu City, 169 from a resort-based illegal Pogo hub. And recently in Tawi-Tawi, January 31, 2025, there are 5 individuals intercepted en route to Malaysia without documents. So what is the Philippine trafficking profile? So this is the profile of the usually trafficked individuals in the Philippines. First is the labor and sex trafficking, which remains as a significant problem. Traffickers exploit especially women and children from rural communities or conflict and disaster affected areas and impoverished urban centers. They also exploit men in forced labor in agricultural, construction, fishing, and maritime industries. And still, the Philippines is one of the largest sources of children who are victims of online sexual exploitation of children. Many of these victims are suspects for this OSEC are either guardian or legal parents of the victims. So the Philippines is trying to campaign against this kind of trafficking by campaign as well as training of personnel to detect any online activities illegally. Traffickers exploit children individually and in groups in live internet broadcasts in exchange for compensation, wired through a money transfer agency or electronic wallets. So this is the Philippines, the southern Philippines. The Philippines has 6 border crossings. When we say border crossing, it is the usual gate, the entry point or exit point of sea vessels coming out from the Philippines and coming into the Philippines. So as mentioned earlier, there were victims that were intercepted in the southern part of the Philippines using the border crossing. So we can see that the border crossings are in the tip of the Philippines where law enforcement agencies are limited, or if it's not limited, scarce when it comes to securing the borders. So a lot of victims, rescued victims in other countries, were transported via sea vessel through these border crossings. So the border crossings, these border crossings are vital when it comes to combating human trafficking, because it became their way out to harbor or to transfer individuals out of the Philippines and exploit them in other countries. So these are cases of trafficking in the Philippines. So these are the usual encounters of passengers departing the country that were intercepted by the Philippine Bureau of Immigration. So one case is that manpower agencies recruit individuals to work in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates as domestic helpers, but ultimately bring them to countries such as Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. So these money agencies recruit individuals with the presumption that they will be brought to KSA, to Dubai as domestic helpers, but eventually they will be transported to this countries, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, which are prone to human trafficking, slavery, and torn war country. Another case is Filipino travelers looking for factory jobs in Singapore, Brazil, and Africa, and ended being trafficked into becoming drug mules. So these are individuals that are aware. They are aware that they are going to Singapore, Brazil, and Africa as factory jobs, but they become drug carriers of mafia or narcotic organizations to transport their illegal materials to other countries. Another one is the overseas Filipino workers employed as singers or entertainers in South Korea are often forced to work as guest relation officers and engage in prostitution. So these individuals are presumed to have a legitimate work as singers or entertainers, but once they arrive in South Korea, they are engaged into prostitution and become part of sexual exploitation. Another case is tourist visa, which are frequently exploited as means to bypass the restriction associated with work visas, thereby facilitating a form of trafficking. As we know, Filipinos have the right to travel abroad, and visas like tourist visa are being used as a shortcut to get a work abroad. They don't go through the legitimate process of getting a legitimate working visa, but they are being enticed to first get a tourist visa, and once they land in a country, they have to find a job in that country without a working visa. Another case is the recruitment of individuals for household workers or domestic helpers positioned in various cities, where they are later assigned to roles as guest relation officers or engaged in prostitution. So just like the ones in the South Korea, these individuals are being enticed to have work in household worker with good compensation, but later on they become part of become victim of sexual exploitation and prostitution. Another case also are minors advised to falsely claim that they are 18 years old or older in order to leave the country without needing permission from their parents or guardians and to qualify for work as domestic helpers. So these usually we've seen this in the immigration, that women below 18 years old pretend to be more than 18 years old to get working visa as well as an overseas Filipino certificate. But once the immigration officers conduct departure formalities, they were able to prove that those women are not 18 years old and are minor and considered children pretending to be adults so that they can leave the country and have a work in other countries. So that ends my presentation against for the human trafficking in the Philippines.